Welcome back on this beautiful day, listener. We are happy to be serving you today. This is Marcos Andrade,
And Gabriel Santos.
and we're here to help push your evolution forward, baby. We hope your day is going wonderful. Today, we're going to be talking to you about possibly one of the most important topics to discuss. Let's remind each other why you're here. You're here because improving the inner relationship you have with yourself is important. You understand the value of what it really means to connect deeply and create a life that you want to be living. And in order to be creating a life that you want to be living, that you find to the highest level of fulfillment, you need to be cultivating courage. And that's the topic of our episode today, episode 9, cultivating courage, the importance of it, what it really means, and how that manifests in all the most important ways in your life, and how this is at the root of everything that you do.
Cultivating courage. We're both very excited to dive into this topic today. I know for myself and Marcus as well, courage has proven to be a pivotal topic as well as skill, which we'll get into. And my personal intention is for people to walk away having more clarity around courage and understanding how they can utilize courage and ultimately cultivate courage such that they can have more and more of what they want in their lives and less of what they don't, obviously.
Personal growth isn't always easy. If it was easy, everyone would be striving to be their best self. But the reality is that the nature of doing hard things is hard. Challenging yourself to grow, to step out of your comfort zone, by its nature, is not easy. And when we step into that world of discomfort, that's where our dreams happen. When we expand ourselves, when we stretch ourselves, when we push past limitations of what we believe was capable for us, for others, for the world, etc. It's inevitable that you're going to step into a world of discomfort. And when that arises naturally, built into the hardwired brain structure of our animalistic behavior, it's to be cautious, to have a healthy level of fear in terms of survival. Our brain wants to make things certain. And by its nature, uncertain is uncertain. That is a process of growing, inevitably going to step into a world of uncertainty. And the goal here is to cultivate the courage that you need to push past the resistance, to push past the fear, to push past whatever might be holding you back, to manifest and create exactly what it is that you want. Courage is at the forefront of all of your change. So thanks for tuning in today, and we're going to be explaining exactly what is required to cultivating above and beyond courage to manifest and break through whatever gets in your way.
Something I want to add right off the bat is that courage is not, I really want to maybe take a couple, not like it's not this special thing that only certain people have. It's not this tremendous thing that like this big thing that you need to cultivate. I'd like to look at it a little more objectively, where it's courage. It can actually be really simple, and it's not difficult. It's not, you don't need to read tons of books about it. You don't. It's really simple. It's this. It's you're resisting something. You're not wanting to do something, and it's this internal decision to push past those things, embrace whatever discomfort or fear you might have about taking an action, and having the courage to go and do it anyways. And you can do this with anything. And we're gonna talk about this in the podcast too that one of the strategies is to start small. Maybe if you're someone who, depending on what the situation is, right, there are going to be certain scenarios where you're not as afraid, and so the ability to muster courage isn't that difficult, right? There are, and then there will be certain situations where you are completely afraid, and the process to cultivate courage may be a little more complex or require a couple more steps or maybe take a little more time. Um, but by and large, courage doesn't have to be this big, what's the word, esoteric thing. It's really, you're afraid to do something, you do it anyways. But we're going to get into some of the nuances and maybe some aspects about cultivating courage that maybe you haven't considered, with the ultimate goal of helping you feel empowered, such that whether it's, you want to clean your room but you're resisting, or you want to quit your job and transition, or you want to say no but you're afraid to, or you want to say yes, right? Just so we're gonna hopefully touch upon a number of different things that you can relate to, such that you can move forward in the direction that you want to.
To your point, Gabe, whether you're starting on a micro or a macro level, right? Whether you're creating massive change all at once or just taking baby steps on your everyday to creating some level of change that you are feeling resistance to, one of the key points we want you to understand is that in this human lifetime, as you are a spiritual being having a human experience, part of having the human experience is understanding that you're never going to totally let go of your emotional states. Your The totality of the spectrum of your emotions are a biological tool. They're your level, they're your discernment and navigation tool in not only your inner but your outer world. The goal here in cultivating more courage is not to be fearless, right? Contrary to massive belief, right? It's not about being fearless. You will always experience the totality of human emotions: sadness, anger, fear. Fear is an incredibly, incredibly useful tool in understanding very important things, aka when you are in danger, when there is a threat to your biological organism. But as you ascend higher in the levels of consciousness and you reach self-actualization, so to speak, understanding what life direction is for you and not for you, understanding the difference between more of what you want and less of what you don't want. And sometimes when you see your life going down a particular path, you could start to build up a lot of fear when you feel powerless to creating that change. Do you see how fear is useful in discernment, helping you understand more of what you want and less of what you don't want? So, where does courage play its role here? Courage is not about eliminating fear. Courage is the quality of choice you make in response to your experience. In the face of emotionally feeling like you don't want to do something, whether it's on a small scale or a big scale, the choice to approach or avoid is what creates entire empires. It's what creates everything in this life. Again, the goal is to not the goal isn't to walk into every single area of your life and absolutely feel no resistance. The goal is to begin to change the behavior of what you do in the face of greater and greater resistance. What are your thoughts on that, Gabe?
The goal is to no longer have any fear ever. Rather, courage is a tool that you use in the face of resistance in your favor, right? To help you. And what comes to mind is, and we'll keep it really simple, right? let's say the night before, let's say you've been sleeping in or snoozing the alarm for a couple months now, and you recognize that this habit is something that you'd like to change, and that instead you like to wake up on the first alarm and do some exercise, right? um but let's just keep it simple, like waking up on the first alarm, that's a challenge for many people. um and so the alarm pops off, it's 8 a.m., let's say, and you have a fork in the road, right? One side says, "Oh, I know I know I said, but this bed feels really good, and I don't know, and I don't know, and I don't know." And you're in that moment, right? On that side of the coin, you're facing that resistance that we're talking about, and you're going back and forth. You have a lot of inner conflict. You're afraid of the discomfort required, and you're more or less in an unconscious state, but you're dealing with this inner conflict, and it is more or less resistance. You can call it other things as well. And then on the other side of the coin is you just doing it, and you getting up, and you moving past it. And what we're talking about here is, what is the difference? Or rather, if you are someone who is in conflict in that moment, what has you then get up and do the thing and get up on the first alarm? There's many different ways, but what we're talking about is courage, right? And what that looks like is, you're literally in bed, you're literally having these thoughts, you're wrestling it within you, but you have the courage to cut all of that out and get up. And you can apply that to other things, right? You have this cluttered mess in the corner of your room that you've been kind of side eyeing for weeks now. And you, in the back of your mind, it's like, man, and this is what's crazy. Part of you is like, I want to go clean that. I want to go clean that. Like, it's true for me. But then another side of you is like, but it's like, man. And it's funny because I don't know about you, Marcos, but in the times where I acknowledge I want to clean it, but I don't, there's this kind of like, it's like it's like a guilty child, like pretending something's not there. But my point being, like, okay, the first example was waking up at 8 a.m. The second example being something in your corner, the mess in your corner. Same thing, right? You want to go do it. There's this side of you that like wants to like say F it and not. And the difference between, what has you then go do it is this sense of courage, which, honesty can be a part of courage as well. The courage to be honest, the courage to pay attention, be like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I truly do want to do this. And you go do it. And so courage kind of has this many different levels. There's this internal courage where you have to kind of be there. You have to be there for the conversation in itself. And then the courage to go and follow through in action.
Let's think about this on a deeper scientific level. Listener, if you haven't already been exposed to this particular model or principle, we call it the pain pleasure principle. Like I said before, by and large, emotions help us navigate the most simplistic, primal nature of avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. To help us establish important habits and patterns of survival and understanding the higher connection to expanding our own human potentials and abilities, like I said before. Under Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as our consciousness grows, so does the quality of our needs and desires. Because we all start off requiring adequate food, shelter, water. Then we meet our psychological needs of safety and the relationships we have. And as we continue to expand up that conscious fulfillment, we reach self-actualization, where the goal is to be the best possible version of us that we can be in this lifetime. But as far as we go up to that pyramid, there's a very specific underlying behavior that's ingrained in our animal. and our human animal being. We are either avoiding pain or approaching pleasure. So how does this reflect back into courage? When you're feeling that resistance, whether it's on a small scale or a large scale, when you're building up a resilience to avoiding resistance, that pain really builds up. And while you think you're avoiding the pain of what you believe is on the other side of taking an action of courage, what you're really doing is choosing the short-term pleasure and creating long-term pain. You want to flip that around. You want to face the short-term pain because that is what is going to create long-term pleasure. In pushing your evolution forward, you need to understand this key insight of your personal power that you're in charge of the pain and the pleasure that you seek. You can override your animalistic behavior no matter how much control you may feel it has over you. It is 100% in your ability to control the consciousness of your actions on a present to present moment. Despite how much resistance you feel, despite how much pain or fear that you may feel, you're at least starting with the courage of owning up to how you feel. You might not even be in a mode of action taking externally, but you begin to take that action internally. Courage in any form starts with a level of honesty as to how things are. And in that process, no matter how big or small it might be, we're releasing some of that victim mentality, victim energy, lower catabolic emotional states. And we're allowing more responsibility to some degree of our own ability to make a decision or to create action. Fear can paralyze your entire fucking life. It can work its way down into every crevice of your being, and you can freeze up and really become someone that you can't even recognize. Or the opposite can happen. What I'm getting at, of course, here is that there's a lot that's under your control, starting with being honest with what you're resisting, what you're fearing, and moving on from there.
Beautiful. Yeah. What I really gathered from this is, you began with the pleasure pain principle, which is our brains are have evolved to avoid pain and seek pleasure, and it's important to know that just as a concept, just so you're aware that that is how the brain works on an evolutionary subconscious primal level. A lot of times it's also a conversation of short-term pleasure versus delayed gratification. And because our brains are wired to seek pleasure, it's very easy to fall into the pattern of seeking the short-term pleasure, which Marcos then said often leads to long-term pain, right? For example, I don't want to get up and go to the gym. I want to stay in bed, right? That's the short-term pleasure. But you do that enough times in a row, all of a sudden you're so far off your goals that you might be, overweight. You might have significant health issues, blah blah blah. You know what that picture looks like. Rather, right? What then works instead is to go towards delayed gratification because you're still getting pleasure. It's just that the pleasure is on the end of delayed gratification. And so, but the point, and it's important that we understand that the brain works in pleasure pain modes, and that if we want to have a life that's fulfilling and has a lot of things that we want, like great health, great finances, great what have you, clean house, what have you, We need to leverage the pleasure pain into our advantage, and that's where if you are someone who can delay gratification and train your brain to be like, okay, how I get pleasure is through waking up early and going to the gym, as opposed to how I get pleasure is avoiding things and having a piece of chocolate, right? Because you're getting pleasure in both scenarios, which is what your brain's looking for. But they're two different modes, as you can tell. And so clearly, we've established that delayed gratification is the route that we want to take if you're listening to this podcast. And how this ties into courage is that you it is in your best interest and often required to utilize courage to stave off the short-term gratification desires, to embrace whatever pain, discomfort, which could be very minuscule, right? But it's still right. The pain to get up at 8 a.m. is still a lot more than the whatever the other side, right? So the courage to acknowledge that, okay, the short-term pleasure, that's actually not what's going to get me where I want to go, right? And then the courage to say, okay, what is the path that will get me there? Okay, doing XYZ, and it's kind of sounding like honesty and courage are kind of interchangeable in this conversation today, but there is kind of the courage required to even be honest. Because you can have the honesty kind of looming in the background, right? You see it, you even think it, but it's the courage that then brings it to the forefront, and that you actually are looking at the honest truth face to face, and then you make a decision about it face to face, right? Because you can put things off. You can know the truth. You can know that waking up at a certain time is good for you, but you can continue to put it off. And what's messed up is that putting it off to our animal brains is a form of pleasure, And I'd like to point out that there's nothing wrong with snoozing, like in terms of morality and judgment. Like that's something that we all do, will most likely do a lot in our lives. The point is not to judge that, make snoozing wrong and make waking up on the first alarm right. The point is for us to distinguish, okay, what we want long term is to have a fulfilling life in which we are proud of how we live and we have what we want, and we're cultivating what we want about our lives. And if that's the case, the blueprint that aligns with that is, for some people, waking up on the first alarm a lot of the time, or and so it's rather, that's just the blueprint, that's just the action that leads you to where you want to go. It's not about right or wrong. And so
Exactly.
we're then speaking to, okay, well, if that's the case, right, if going to the gym is the move, how do I get myself there? And that's where courage, delayed gratification all comes into play.
Exactly. There's a very powerful, essential understanding that we are sharing with you today that's going to help push your evolution forward. When you repeatedly approach and avoid on both a micro and a macro level, what you are repeatedly approaching and avoiding will eventually solidify themselves as a conditioned emotional response in some form. These conditioned emotional responses become hardwired patterns in the brain's physical structure. Neurons that fire together, wire together. The brain is always trying to improve itself and automate all possible tasks and responses so that you don't have to think about the behavior. The same goes for all bodies of knowledge. When you first started driving a car, you barely knew what to do. Now you don't even think about it. The issue arises here when we have emotionally conditioned behavior and responses that are no longer serving us. And that fear of, I can't change this conditioned response, builds up and up and up. And we build entire patterns and lifestyles in avoidance of pleasures that actually serve us. Being the most authentic version of us that we want to be is the highest level of pleasure on a psychological high conscious understanding of who you are. We can learn to avoid pleasures that serve us and seek pains that destroy us. Any infinite combination of approach or avoidance patterns can form themselves in our subconscious patterns and in our lives. You have to become aware of what you're resisting and then stepping into courage of being honest with what you're resisting, and then stepping into the courage of taking action. And our goal is to help you understand that it's a lot easier for you to psychologically, in your inner world, lower that barrier of taking a step forward, lower the barrier of action to start creating consistent action. Because in reality, the main thing for you will always be the main thing. The thing you're avoiding is usually the thing that you have to approach in some capacity. And the more exposure you get to the thing that you fear, it's just going to dissolve itself, regardless of what it is, because you will conditioned a new emotional response. It's only a matter of exposure and repetition, and you consciously choosing the new emotional response that you want to head in the direction that best serves you.
Okay, how does one we're getting to kind of the step by steps here, right? How does one cultivate courage? So the first thing I want to say is if you're someone listening to this and you get what we're saying and you don't feel a tremendous amount of disempowerment, you're like, oh, this is clicking for you, then power to you, right? Utilize courage, go take the steps you know you need to take. It's very simple, right? Okay, I've been wanting to clean my room. I'm just gonna go do it, right? And I'll get touch base with Marcos here. How do you feel about now speaking to someone who who just is courage? Okay, we get it. We're listening to you guys. Courage. Okay, now what? I feel riddled with fear. I don't have any courage. I don't even know where to start. Um, how can I? What should I do? What do you feel?
The first step to take is to understanding that in reality, your biggest fear doesn't exist. Fear is anticipating a hypothetical threat that hasn't happened. You're scanning into the horizon and choosing a particular reality that's going to happen that you must defend yourself in, or that you must be on some level of readiness to protect your physical existence or your psychological existence. Whether it's protect your physical body or protect your psychological ego. Your biggest fear doesn't actually exist because you're projecting the hypothetical reality of it. That's the first step. Understand that. Now, you need to understand that the only way that you're going to move forward is by moving forward. Period. Success is measured in small steps, and it is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Every step you take in the direction on the journey of manifesting more of what you want is success. Everyone who's 10 years down the road in front of you who has done the thing that you want to do, they've just walked the path. It's up to you to walk the path. And every step of that path is success. And success is believing and stepping into the reality that you want to step into. You're going to manifest whatever you focus on. You're going to feel whatever you focus on. Do you want to focus on the hypothetical reality of you not creating what you want and guarantee that you're absolutely not going to manifest it because it's what you believe in? Or are you going to take your next best bad step or your next best bad guess to see, to hypothesize if more of what you want can happen? If the resistance to whatever you're trying to create would dissolve itself 10% more, 20% more. In reality, your conditioned emotional response will only change if you begin to consciously choose the new conditioned emotional response. So, what is it that you want? Imagine it. That's what your consciousness is for.
So this is exactly what we're what so if you're someone who, you're hearing this courage, okay, I get it. Courage sounds like something that I need, but you don't know where to begin. It's actually very simple. Like Marcus said, what do you want? And pick one area of your life, right? Um, let's say anything. You want to clean your room? Do you want to change up your health? Do you want to let's go with health, right? That's a common one for people. And so, how do you cultivate courage when it comes to the area of health? It begins with, okay, well, what are the actions that you need to take in order to align with your health? And let's keep it simple. Drink more water, eat less junk food, do some form of exercise, right? I'm sure this is not the whoever's listening, this is not the first time you've tried to upgrade your health. And so, how do you begin to implement courage? It's very simple, right? Those are the action items we need to take, put them on the to do list, and see what happens, right? Because the moment's going to come. The moment's going to come to do them. And this is what Marcos is talking about. This is what we're talking about in terms of implementing new responses to stimulus, new responses to your life, which is essentially you creating new habits, right? And so you put on to-do list, drink more water, go to the gym, eat a salad, whatever food you want to put there, and see what happens. See what happens. So what may happen is the water's right in front of you, or rather, right, your brain. You wake up at 7 and it's like, or 10 even, and it's like that there's things on the to-do list. What courage looks like in that situation is the courage to re- remember that this is something that matters to you for that day, and that these are things that you want to prioritize and do. Believe it or not, that can be where it starts for many people. Like the courage to be like, yeah, this matters to me still. I'm going to put myself in a position to get them done. Um, and then the courage to whatever you need to do, like have a plan and execute, right? The moment comes, it's 2 p.m. I said, I'm going to go to the gym, right? You're wrestling with it. I don't want to, or maybe you even want to ignore that the fact that you had it on the agenda by that time of the day, right? What courage does is it takes a deep breath, right? It puts aside all of these back and forth inner thoughts, and it goes and does the thing, right? So that's where you can be, and so it becomes a cultivating courage is something that you implement in practice every day or as often as you can, and that's how you cultivate courage. And it's going to sound like kind of messed up, right? How do you cultivate courage? Well, by cultivating it. And how do you do that? You put yourself in the position to cultivate it. And what does that mean? You have things on your agenda that would move you forward towards your goals. Exercise. And when the time comes to exercise, you implement the courage to then go and do the exercise. And that's a long-winded way of saying, get out of your feelings and just go do it. But this conversation today is about kind of dissecting the nuances of what that means and why it's important. Um, and something I'd like to emphasize is that when you decide to utilize courage in a consistent way, as opposed to avoidance or fear or complacency, the type of life you're going to have overall, because of the fact that you've utilized courage, is going to be tremendously different and more aligned. And this is the point here, right? When you're someone who makes decisions from a place of being complacent or lazy, the amount of fulfillment and true happiness you can really have is capped, right? Because you're saying no to a lot of the things that would have you feel really good. right? You can only feel so good when you're eating candy, watching TV, and avoiding things, getting the pleasure of procrastination. That it's very short lived. And you can try and stack your day with a bunch of these short-term pleasures, but again, it's like a plastic type of happiness. And if you do this for so long, you'll feel that this is not really happiness. This is like fabricated, like pleasure. You can feel that. Whereas if you go towards delayed gratification and you utilize the courage that has you go towards delayed gratification, the type of happiness that you're going to have is so different. The fulfillment, you're going to find yourself being on these walks, you're going to find yourself drinking the water, you're going to find yourself at the end of the day, right, having done a bunch of these things, move your life forward with a sense of inner peace, with a sense of pride, with a sense of alignment, which are things you can't get when you're coming from a place of avoiding and complacency. That's why courage can be this gateway to all of these fantastic emotions and results that we want. That's what this is all about. So courage, the magic word, the magic state of
The,
being, rather, courage.
the courage to be honest with yourself and to listen to your highest needs, your highest authenticity, loving yourself, the courage to be there for yourself in the way that you want yourself to be there. There is resistance in that process because of the relationship that we've built over time with ourselves. In some way, some people are much worse off than others. And we've definitely all had dark nights of the soul. At the end of the day, you basically got to do the thing. In the modern day, your physical level of safety is not threatened. For most people, you know where your next meal is coming from. You have an abundance of water. You have shelter. Most people on this planet at this point have but most of our needs met. It comes down to facing the fears of not allowing ourselves to grow beyond what we know we can, to leave our comfort zone, to step into the unknown and manifest more of what we truly know that we deserve. Cultivating courage. You got this. Do the thing.
How? Courage. Courage. Do the thing. Courage. And see what happens.
All the resistance dissolves the more repetitive you are at facing that fear. It really is as simple as that. Thank you for listening with us. We are always here to serve you. We love you, and we want to see you grow in the best way that you can. Cultivate that courage, baby. Tune in next time. Marcos out.
Gabe Santos out of here too. See you guys next time. Peace.
See ya.